All right, welcome back. We're glad they're here for the second week in our series. Before I get into it, though, I want to remind you, as kind of people have filled in the last few minutes, this road rally thing is coming up. Here's some of our CrossFit athletes posing for an awesome photo. But we're going to do this, it's like a photo scavenger hunt. It'd be a lot of fun, so I hope that you'll sign up for it next weekend. And if not, just come to the dinner. It'd be a great time just to get to know some new people. A lot of new folks here at Chaparral, and it's a chance for you to get to know some of them in some crazy hats. So I hope you'll sign up for that. Okay, so we're in this series called Baggage, and I'll tell you, this bumper video has really just got me, because I can identify with that piece of baggage just kind of going around and around and around and around, because actually it happened to me. Several years ago, I was flying to Tennessee for a doctoral class. And so, it was in January. And I took 2 bags. One bag I checked, and one bag was my carry-on. So I get on the airplane. Now let me ask you a question. What's the reason that you have a carry-on? There's stuff that you want to have with you, right? I mean, there's a reason you didn't check it, because you want to you're going to carry this on a crowded plane and stick into a crammed overhead bin and fight with this whole bag because you want it where you can get to it, where you can see it, touch it. It's right there. So if you lose your carry-on, either you did something really wrong or the flight didn't go so well, right? Well, sure enough, I lost my checked bag. What happened was I was getting on the plane last, right? The first to be last and the last to be first, or so I thought. So I get to the ramp there, and what happens is everyone brought their golf clubs or something, because there's no more room in the overhead bin for my carry-on bag. So they said, we're going to check your bag. I'm like, I don't want you to check my bag because I want to take it with me on the plane. And they said, sorry, sir, no problem. We're just going to put it right in the baggage compartment. You'll get it when you get there. Anybody else did anybody else besides me? Okay, so I get to Tennessee, Johnson City, Tennessee, land, get out, and there's my checked bag, but not my carry-on bag, with my coat, my computer cables, my power, all the stuff I really needed wasn't there. Where it was in Chicago doing this, just riding around some conveyor belt for 4 days. Right? I mean, so it's one of those things where we kind of need our bags sometimes. Now, this one wasn't my fault, but sometimes when we have trouble with baggage and packing and all that kind of stuff, sometimes it is our fault, especially when it comes to vacations. Anybody here a classic overpacker for vacations? Someone's poking to the other people. Yeah, me. I didn't think I was. I really didn't. I didn't consider myself an overpacker until I was writing this message and started thinking about it. So this is a true story. We went to San Diego with the kids, 3 kids, a while back. We drove. We're driving in, the family truckster, right? Get in the car, and we had this truck packed for San Diego. And I was thinking through some of the stuff we packed. My son Jacob wanted to bring his Xbox to the hotel. So we packed it. But then he said, well, Dad, we got to have good Wi-Fi for the Xbox. So we brought our own Wi-Fi router. Then we decided we don't want to pay for the movies at the hotel, so we brought our Apple TV to plug into the Wi-Fi router and jump it into the TV. And on top of that, Stacy thought the Ice Age was coming and started with California, so we brought all this winter clothes with us to California. And then we had work to do to catch up on, because we do on vacation, you catch up on work, right? So we brought, not kidding, a printer for the hotel room. Stacy also packed food and a ton of snacks, because obviously in California they don't have stores. I mean, we were like packing for a 6-month journey to a third world country, not like a week in California. And it was crazy, all this stuff that we had in our car. We brought books to catch up on, all this kind of stuff. And I'm sure a lot of you have done something similar, maybe not the Wi-Fi router and the printer and the Apple TV, but I mean, you kind of get it, right? We overpack. And the thing is that when we overpack, that's a lot of stuff to manage. That's like several trips up the stairs into the hotel room. It's a lot of work when we overpack and get too much stuff, but we want to be prepared. We don't want to miss out on something or lose something, so we overpack. One of my favorite stories growing up was I lived in Indiana. Okay, most of you know that. I grew up in Indiana, northern Indiana, up by Gary, Indiana, that area, farming country. Worked for a farmer in high school. Okay, so again, northwest Indiana in the fall. So it's cold, it's rainy, it's wet. And so me and my buddy were paid to go out on a Saturday and cut down some trees because he wanted to plant some more soybeans in this area, right? So we're cutting down these big, huge, trees and cutting them into like 6-foot sections and loading them onto a trailer. So we had gotten a trailer and a big John Deere tractor, and we were out there in the rain, there's that misty kind of just wet, damp, frustrating rain, and that mud where it sticks to your boots and you can't walk, and we're just kind of cold, right? Your socks are sloshy in the boots, you know what I'm talking about. And we're loading these logs. Well, as we're loading the logs, the ground's muddy, so the tires begin to kind of sink down into the mud. And you'd think, if we were smart guys, we would have said, well, it's getting kind of sinky, so let's go ahead and just take some to the farmhouse, which is miles and miles away, unload it, come back, get another load. But we were teenagers. And we thought, well, it'd be easier and faster if we just piled up as high as we can get it piled up, chain it down, and just tow the whole mess of it to the farmhouse, and then tomorrow we'll come back and unload it. Good idea? Yeah, you weren't there. Yeah, your socks are all cold and wet. So we got this big thing, and sure enough, man, it is. So by the time we were done, this is no lie, I'm not even making this up. This is how bad it was. The trailer bed was like flush with the ground. I mean, it was like down there. We got John Deere with us, right? So we get in John Deere, and we're talking like not a little, we're talking a big tractor with a cab, air conditioning, big, huge dually wheels in the back. We crank this thing up, it's belching, diesel fuel and stuff. Put this thing in gear and start going, right? No. What happens is the back of the tractor just buries itself down to the axle. And now we are stuck, like really stuck. Because you think about it, this was before cell phones. Back in these days, phones had cords to them, So we had no cell phone, we had no pager, no GPS, nothing, right? So we're in the middle of nowhere, it's getting dark, we're cold, wet, damp, and we are like literally stuck. If we walked back to the farmhouse with our mud-covered heavy boots, it was going to take us forever to get there. We are completely frustrated and stuck, and it's our own fault, right? We overloaded. We had too much baggage on that trailer to get it moving. And I think a lot of you might know what that's like. To be that stuck in your life. Maybe not right now, but maybe at some point you've done that. You've tried to carry too much baggage in your life. Maybe it's a relationship that you're constantly trying to fix, and it begins to be a burden. Or maybe you keep loading on one more thing onto your trailer, one more thing on your schedule that I can just kind of squeeze in there. And yeah, it went down a little bit, but I can pull that. Or one more task for the task list at work, or just one more hobby. And all this stuff we start adding to our lives begins to kind of weigh us down. We feel ourselves sinking down the mud, and we're getting stuck. We think, I can handle it. It's amazing to me how realistic the Bible itself is about this kind of thing, about how we get stuck like this in habits, lack of discipline, those kind of things. In fact, the Apostle Paul was writing to a church in the capital, Rome, and he talks about his own life and his own frustrations with this kind of stuff. He says this in Romans 7. It's in this really confessional section. It's not theology, it's not theory. He is talking about this frustration that we have. He said, I can want to do what is right, but I cannot do it, he says. For I do not do the good I want, but the evil I do not want is what I do. Now, if I do what I do not want, it is no longer I that do it, but sin that dwells within me. So I find it to be a law that when I want to do what is good, evil lies close at hand. For I love the law of God in my inmost self, but I see in my members another law at war with the law of my mind, making me captive to the law of sin that dwells in my members. Wretched man that I am. He's like, man, I am just at the bottom This is an apostle. Started churches. Wrote most of the New Testament. And what he's saying here is that I don't have a problem with God's instructions. He said, God's instructions are good. God's law is good. It's my problem. It's my baggage. Last week we heard from Jesus and he said, take my yoke upon you. Remember that? My yoke is easy. My burden is light. Well, this word yoke in the New Testament was, it's that thing that you put on oxen to plow a field, but it's also a metaphor, a symbol of law or instruction. The Torah, the Jewish law, was called a yoke. And Jesus says, my instructions for you and for your life are good. They are easy. They are light. They are designed to help and not overburden you. They're not to be this extra baggage you have to carry around. But that extra baggage, Paul says, is my fault. We're the ones who bear that baggage of sin. And maybe you feel kind of like that today. That you feel stuck. You feel like your axles are buried down in the mud. And you're wondering how you're going to get out. You're just spinning and spinning your wheels, getting deeper and deeper and deeper. Well, I don't want you to stay there. I don't want to stay there. I mean, we don't want to stay in this frustrating world that Paul talks about. We don't want our socks all wet and soggy and our feet cold and muddy, right? We don't want to be like that. So I'm going to give you 3 tools, 3 reminders maybe, just to help us when we feel stuck. The first is this. Remember this, that God is looking for you. I mean, when you're stuck, remember that God is actually pursuing and looking for you in a passionate way. When we were in that field, like I said, we were stuck, right? We weren't going anywhere. Well, in about 10 or 15 minutes, we looked down the road, and here comes this old beat-up pickup truck. It was the farmer, the guy who owned the tractor and the fields and all that kind of stuff. Here he comes in his old pickup truck because we'd been gone a long time. And we were excited to see him. Not because he was just coming, but because we had someone who could help. He had experienced, he'd probably done this kind of thing before, and he could help us. And so we were excited that he was going to show up and was on his way. When you and I are stuck, when we are overloaded, when we have all this baggage, don't ever forget that God pursues you in a relentless and a tenacious way, and always has been. He's been after his people since the very beginning. The beginning of Genesis, after the creation, God creates Adam and Eve, and they're hanging out in the garden with God, talking with God, walking with God. They are with God. But then they decide to obey the one law he gives them, right? Don't eat from that tree. I'm like, yeah, it looks pretty good. And they eat from that tree. And when they do, they know they've done something wrong. They know they've gone against what God wanted for them. And what do immediately? They hide. They run and hide. And what does God do? He doesn't say to him, oh, yeah, well, you shouldn't have done that. Well, that was a dumb idea. How's it working out for you? No, what he does, he gets in his pickup truck. God has a pickup truck, by the way. He gets in his pickup truck, and he drives down to where they're at. He goes looking for them. It says in Genesis that God said, where are you? It's one word in Hebrew, Ayecha. Where are you? He was looking for them. Now, he knows where they're at, but he wants them to know he's coming. He's coming to find them, despite what they've done. He doesn't want them to stay stuck. He doesn't want them to stay in hiding. He doesn't want you to stay stuck or me to stay stuck and buried. He comes to help. In fact, at the end of this chapter in Romans 7, Paul says, who will rescue me from this body of death? Thanks be to God through Christ Jesus our Lord. He goes through this whole frustrating thing. I'm a wretched man. I'm terrible. I can't believe this. I keep struggling with this. I'm stuck. I'm spinning my tires. I'm covered in mud. And then he says this, who's going to save me from this? Jesus is going to save me. He does. He comes to help me. He comes to help. So are you looking for him to come? Are you looking for him coming down the road to you? The second thing I want to leave with you today is when you're stuck, look for friends. I mean, that's kind of what the church is about. Looking for friends to help. When the farmer showed up, he looked at the tractor, he's like, kind of, did the whole, like, are you kidding me? Look, shaking his head thing. And we thought he would make us unload the trailer, which he probably should have. Right? When we made the mess, get these big, huge logs all off, but he didn't. You know what he did, which actually was pretty cool? He gets on his CB radio. Yeah, we had those back then. Gets on his CB radio, Breaker 190. He calls up his two friends who live down the road, and they come to help. One of them shows up first, brings this huge, I'm talking massive tractor. You see those tractors that have like 8 wheels on them? I mean, this is a big German, huge thing. And he pulls that tractor up in front of our tractor and chains it so now you have 2 tractors and this huge pile of wood, this big thing. And they fire those 2 things up, man, the farmer and his buddy, and they start pulling. What do you think happened? Yeah, they buried both of them. And I'm not kidding. Again, this is a true story. Both of them, I mean, it was really cool, but still, I mean, you're like, oh, now what are you going to do, right? Well, then the second friend shows up. And guess what he brought? A bulldozer. Don't know why he had one, but he had a bulldozer. So with the tracks on it, he wouldn't get stuck. So he gets behind our sled, and you get the 2 trailers or the 2 tractors in front, and they get going, right? But the thing was, and they push the sled, or the trailer, it just moves. Now here's the thing about it. They needed friends, right? Until his friends showed up, we weren't going anywhere. But he had 2 friends that were willing to get muddy, willing to get in the mix with them. And we too need godly friends who help us when we're stuck. That's what real friends do. They get into the mess with us. They're willing to work alongside us, to put their nose to the grindstone to help us when things get tough. Ecclesiastes 4:9 says, 2 are better than 1, because they have a good reward for their toil. For if they fall, one will lift up the other. But woe to the one who is alone and falls and does not have the other to help. Again, if 2 lie together, they keep warm. But how can one keep warm alone? And though one might prevail against another, 2 will withstand 1. A 3-fold cord is not quickly broken. We need friends that will help us, who will get their tractors out, their bulldozers, and help us when we're stuck. And friendship is muddy. It is messy. And sometimes, by the way, a good friend, a true friend, is willing to get muddy, and that means it's not going to be pretty all the time. Sometimes they'll give you advice that isn't always welcome. Proverbs 27 says, well-meant, get this, well-meant are the wounds a friend inflicts, but profuse are the kisses of an enemy. I'm sure a lot of you have experienced this. Real friends will tell you the truth. Real friends will say the hard thing because they care about you. Enemies don't. They'll say all the right things, all the nice things, make you feel good about yourself. But a real friend is willing to get muddy and dirty to help you. And they're few and far between. Sometimes you need someone to give you a kick in the pants more than a pat on the back. And real friends can do that. Like I said earlier, in a couple of weeks, we'll be talking more and more about small groups and home groups. And one of the main pieces of that is the friendships we want you to build in those groups. And there's 2 reasons for it. 2 reasons. Number one reason I want you to get involved in a small group and get friendships like that is because a lot of you have bulldozers in your garage. You do. I know a lot of you. You have bulldozers and you have John Deere tractors in your garage. You need to use them to help someone who's stuck. There's a lot of stuck people out there, a lot of them. A lot of lonely, isolated, stuck people. And you've got a bulldozer. I want you to use it. Get to know somebody. Be a friend. Tell the truth with love. Help them get unstuck. And the second reason is some of you are stuck. And you need a bulldozer. You need someone to come help you. And it's okay to ask. And it won't happen overnight. It won't be like you go to a small group and boom, it's fixed. But you get to know people who will care about you, who have the same vision of walking with God that you do, that will get closer to God like you do, to come alongside you and help you get unstuck. That's what friends who serve Jesus do. I want that for you as well. Galatians 6:2 says, bear one another's burdens, and this way you'll fulfill the law of Christ. The third tool is this. There's no reason to overpack. Right? A lot of us overpack because we want to get done quickly or get through it or avoid possible difficulties, be prepared. There's no reason for us to overpack. That trailer, I said, we got it unstuck, right? We took 2 tractors and a bulldozer, we got it moving. Here's the problem. We got it moving, we noticed something missing on the trailer. The axle. So what happened was we literally ripped the axle off the trailer. And now it was like a sled, right? So you had this huge sled of wood just... Well, what had happened was, this wasn't our fault, but it kind of was. So back in the mud, over here was the axle. When we let it sink down into the mud, there was this old, probably 100-year-old barbed wire fence that was on that field at one point that had fallen and gotten in that mud and just over the years had sunk down. And so when the trailer went down, those wheels got wrapped up in that barbed wire fence. So it's kind of like rebar in concrete, right? I mean, it's like just all this barbed wire and these tires, and it was all kind of tied together, and so it just tore off the trailer bed from the axle. Look, there are things in life that are going to happen to you like that fence. You're not going to see it coming. Or it's just going to be a surprise. Or you do your very best, and there's something else that's holding you back, or it's either the baggage you put on the top, like those logs we put on, or something you didn't see. But here's the thing. Our faith in God will help us get through those times. Even things we don't expect or see or didn't anticipate. We trust a God who has a future for us. That's what faith is all about. We have a firm future with God, even when there's these unknown things that come into our lives. Whatever it is that's getting you stuck. In Hebrews 11:1, it says, faith is the assurance of things hoped for, the conviction of things not seen. Whatever that baggage is for you, whatever that buried fence is for you, God has a future for us that is unstuck, that has an easy yoke and a light burden if we trust Him, if we have faith in Him. Whatever it is, whether it's a bad habit or a tense relationship, a lack of discipline, whatever image of stuckness is in your mind right now, there is a future for you. There's hope for you because God promised it. So, 3 things. Remember that God is pursuing you. God is looking for you. No matter how stuck you are, God's got in His pickup truck. He's coming looking for you. The second thing is find friends. Seek out friends who can help you bring their bulldozer, bring their tractor, or you can bring yours to help them. But we need each other. And the third thing is have faith that when you're stuck, that God's going to get you unstuck. That God's got a tractor big enough to pull you out, and He cares enough to do it. And if you ever doubt that, remember this meal we're about to take. We're about to share communion. What's that meal all about? It's about a God who pursued us all the way to Bethlehem. All the way from heaven to Bethlehem, He pursued us. He pursued us in the streets of Galilee, healing the broken, taking those who were sinners and making them unstuck. He carried the baggage of our sin on His back on that cross through the streets of Jerusalem. In John 15, it says, He called us friends. Go back and read that. Underline it. Circle it. He says, I don't call you slaves or servants. I call you guys friends. And then He showed up and laid down His life for His friends, for us, so that we would have a future with Him, a forever future with Him. And so this bread and this cup we're about to partake reminds us that He pursues us, He loves us, He calls us friends, and He carries that baggage of sin for us. So we don't have to be stuck anymore. Let's pray together.